10 countries that dislike India right now, the global tensions unfold. India, the world's largest democracy, a rising economic powerhouse, and a nation with deep-rooted cultural and historical significance, has positioned itself as a key player in global affairs. From dominating the tech and pharmaceutical industries to strengthening military alliances and reshaping trade policies, India's influence stretches across continents. But with great power comes great opposition. While India has cultivated strong ties with nations like the US, Japan, and Australia, it has also found itself at odds with several countries, some due to territorial disputes, others because of economic rivalry, political disagreements, or deep-seated historical wounds. Today, we uncover 10 countries where tensions with India have reached a boiling point. Whether it's border standoffs, trade conflicts, strained diplomatic ties, or ideological clashes, these nations have, in recent years, expressed their discontent with India in various ways. Some have imposed sanctions, others have fueled anti-India sentiments, and a few have even engaged in direct confrontations. But what drives this animosity? Why do certain nations hold grievances against India? Political disputes, religious sensitivities, and economic rivalries all play a part. Stay with us as we dive into the complexities behind these strained relationships and explore the countries that, at this very moment, stand in opposition to India. 1. China, the long-standing rival. The relationship between India and China has been one of economic rivalry, military tension, and geopolitical competition. These two Asian giants, both home to over 1 billion people, have long been in an uneasy standoff, with diplomatic engagements often overshadowed by deep-rooted suspicions. The biggest flashpoint between the two nations remains the border dispute along the Himalayan region, particularly in Ladak's Galwan Valley and Arunachal Pradesh. The deadly 2020 Galwan Valley clash, which resulted in casualties on both sides, reignited tensions and led to a military buildup along the line of actual control, LAC, the de facto border between the two nations. Skirmishes and troop confrontations continue, with neither side backing down. Beyond territorial disputes, economic competition has fueled hostility between India and China. As India strives to become a global manufacturing hub, offering an alternative to China's dominance in the supply chain, tensions in trade have escalated. India has banned hundreds of Chinese apps, citing security concerns, and placed restrictions on Chinese investments. On the other hand, China remains India's largest trading partner, creating a paradox where economic interdependence coexists with strategic rivalry. The geopolitical chessboard further complicates matters. India's growing ties with the United States, Japan, and Australia under the Quad Alliance are viewed by China as an attempt to contain its influence in Asia. Additionally, India's support for Taiwan and its stance on the South China Sea disputes have irritated Beijing. The Chinese media frequently portrays India as a rival rather than a partner, influencing public sentiment and fostering nationalistic animosity. With both nations unwilling to compromise on their strategic interests, tensions remain at an all-time high. 2. Pakistan, the historical enemy. Few rivalries in modern history are as deeply entrenched as the India-Pakistan conflict. Since their partition in 1947, the two nations have fought 3 major wars, countless border skirmishes, and have remained locked in diplomatic and military hostilities. At the heart of this animosity is the ongoing Kashmir dispute. The conflict intensified in 2019, when India revoked Article 370, stripping Jammu and Kashmir of its special status. Pakistan strongly condemned the move, viewing it as an attempt to suppress Kashmiri Muslims, and tensions surged along the line of control, LoC, leading to increased military confrontations. Beyond territorial disputes, terrorism accusations continue to be a major source of friction. India accuses Pakistan of harboring terrorist groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba, which have been responsible for major attacks on Indian soil, including the 2008 Mumbai attacks and the 2019 Pulwama bombing. Pakistan, in turn, claims India supports insurgents in Balochistan,
further worsening relations.
Both countries regularly engage in diplomatic blame games, and any chance of reconciliation is often derailed by fresh accusations.
The hostility between India and Pakistan is deeply embedded in public sentiment.
Media narratives in both nations demonize the other side, fueling hatred among citizens. This animosity extends to sports, cultural exchanges, and even business relations. Pakistani artists are banned in India, and trade between the two nations has been significantly reduced. Despite rare moments of diplomacy, such as during humanitarian crises or cricket matches, the India-Pakistan relationship remains one of the most volatile in the world, with both nations standing on opposite sides of history.
3. Canada, rising diplomatic disputes.
Historically, India and Canada shared friendly ties, with a large Indian diaspora, particularly Sikh immigrants, contributing to Canada's economy.
However, in recent years, diplomatic tensions between the two nations have escalated to unprecedented levels.
The primary issue at the heart of this fallout is the Khalistan movement, a Sikh separatist movement that aims to establish an independent state in Punjab. India accuses Canada of harboring Sikh extremists, particularly after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government was seen as sympathetic to certain pro-Khalistan groups. The situation worsened in 2023, when Canadian authorities alleged that Indian agents were involved in the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh separatist leader whom India had designated as a terrorist. The accusations led to an explosive diplomatic crisis, with both nations expelling diplomats and suspending trade negotiations. India, in retaliation, imposed visa restrictions on Canadian nationals, further straining ties. The public sentiment in Canada has also taken a turn, with Canadian politicians openly criticizing India's human rights record and aligning with groups that India considers anti-national. Indian media, in response, has accused Canada of becoming a safe haven for separatists, causing deep resentment among Indian nationalists. The once warm relationship has now turned cold and hostile, with no signs of improvement in the near future.
4. Maldives, anti-India backlash. Despite being a small island nation, the Maldives has recently made headlines for its anti-India stance.
Traditionally, India has been Maldives' closest ally, offering military, economic, and medical aid. However, the political landscape in the Maldives has dramatically shifted, leading to a surge in anti-India sentiment. The most significant issue driving hostility is the India Out campaign, which was fueled by opposition parties accusing the Indian government of meddling in Maldivian politics. The campaign gained momentum in 2023, leading to widespread protests demanding the removal of Indian military personnel stationed in the country. Although India's presence in the Maldives was mainly for humanitarian and defense cooperation, the narrative was twisted to portray India as an oppressive power.
Adding to this is the growing influence of China.
The new Maldivian government under President Mohamed Muizzu has aligned itself with Beijing, scaling back ties with India. This shift has affected economic partnerships, tourism collaborations, and defense agreements. With Maldives strategically located in the Indian Ocean, India views this geopolitical shift as a threat to its maritime security. Once a reliable ally, the Maldives is now leaning toward China, further complicating India's foreign policy in the region. 5. Nepal, growing anti-India sentiment. Despite their historical, cultural, and religious ties, India and Nepal have seen growing diplomatic tensions in recent years.
Nepal, a landlocked country, is heavily dependent on India for trade, transit, and employment opportunities. However, many Nepalese feel that India exerts excessive influence over their domestic affairs, leading to accusations of political interference. One of the biggest sources of tension is the border dispute over Kalapani, Lipulekh, and Limpiadura, territories claimed by both India and Nepal. In 2020, Nepal released a new political map that included these disputed areas, angering India. This led to heated debates, diplomatic protests, and a deterioration of trust. Additionally, economic dependency on India has sparked resentment among Nepalese citizens.
India's occasional blockades and trade restrictions have significantly impacted Nepal's economy, leading to allegations that India uses its economic power as a tool for political coercion. In response, Nepal has sought closer ties with China, further straining relations with India. While the people of both nations share deep cultural bonds, the political leaderships remain at odds over territorial disputes, trade policies, and regional alliances. The rising nationalist movements in Nepal are pushing for a more independent stance, often at the cost of India-Nepal relations. If diplomatic efforts fail, tensions between these two neighbors may continue to escalate in the coming years. 5. Nepal, growing anti-India sentiment. The border dispute between India and Nepal remains one of the most contentious issues between the two nations. The Kalapani, Lipulekh, and Limpiadura regions have long been claimed by both countries, fueling nationalist sentiments in Nepal. In 2020, Nepal released a new political map that incorporated these areas, a move that was met with sharp criticism from India. While New Delhi argues that the territory falls within India's Uttarakhand state, Nepal insists it rightfully belongs to its Darchula district. The conflict traces back to the 1816 Sugauli Treaty signed between the British East India Company and the Kingdom of Nepal, which defined the Kali River as the boundary, but disagreements over the river's origin point have led to decades of diplomatic standoffs. Despite several rounds of bilateral talks, a permanent resolution remains elusive, and the issue continues to stir anti-India sentiments among Nepalese citizens, who view India's stance as an encroachment on their sovereignty.
Interference accusations.
Some Nepalese politicians believe India meddles in Nepal's internal politics beyond territorial disputes. India is often accused of interfering in Nepal's internal affairs. Many Nepalese politicians and activists claim that India wields excessive influence over their country's political landscape, often backing certain political factions or attempting to sway policy decisions. This perception was particularly strong during Nepal's 2015 constitutional crisis, when India imposed an informal blockade against Nepal, allegedly in response to protests by the Madhesi community, ethnic Indians residing in Nepal. The blockade led to severe shortages of fuel, medicine, and essential supplies, further deepening resentment. Many Nepalese believe that India's actions were punitive, aimed at pressuring Nepal to amend its new constitution in a way that favored Indian interests. While India has denied these allegations, the distrust continues, making diplomatic engagement challenging. Nepal's heavy reliance on India for trade and transit has long been a sore point in bilateral relations. As a landlocked country, Nepal depends on Indian ports for the majority of its imports and exports. While India provides Nepal with preferential trade agreements, many Nepalese citizens argue that this economic dependency allows India to exert undue influence over their policies. The 2015 blockade is a prime example of how India's economic leverage can be used as a political tool, which has led Nepal to diversify its trade partnerships, including closer ties with China. In recent years, Nepal has signed agreements with China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, allowing it to reduce reliance on India. This growing economic shift toward China is seen in New Delhi as a geopolitical challenge, further complicating relations. 6. Bangladesh, strained relations despite historic ties. Border killings. India's border forces have clashed with Bangladeshi civilians and security forces. India and Bangladesh share a 4,096-kilometer-long border, one of the longest land borders in the world. However, the Indo-Bangladesh border is among the most volatile, with frequent reports of clashes between Indian Border Security Forces, BSF, and Bangladeshi civilians. The BSF often fires at Bangladeshi nationals, accusing them of smuggling, illegal crossings, or cattle trafficking. Bangladesh has repeatedly raised concerns over extrajudicial killings at the border, calling for greater restraint from Indian forces. While Indian authorities claim their actions are aimed at curbing cross-border crime, Bangladesh sees it as a violation of human rights, fueling anger among its citizens. The issue remains a major point of contention in bilateral talks and continues to strain relations. The Teesta River water dispute has been a long-standing conflict between India and Bangladesh. Bangladesh, a country highly dependent on its rivers for agriculture and livelihoods, accuses India of unfairly diverting Teesta's waters through upstream dams in West Bengal. The two countries had almost finalized a water-sharing treaty in 2011, but West Bengal's Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee opposed the deal, citing concerns over water availability for her own state. Since then, the issue has remained unresolved, leading to frustrations in Bangladesh. In response, Bangladesh has sought China's assistance in developing irrigation projects, further worrying India about Beijing's increasing footprint in the region. Historically, India played a crucial role in Bangladesh's liberation from Pakistan in 1971, but economic and geopolitical shifts have changed the dynamics of their relationship. In recent years, Bangladesh has deepened its ties with China, signing multiple infrastructure deals under the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. China has become Bangladesh's largest trading partner, offering loans, investments, and defense equipment, reducing Bangladesh's reliance on India. This shift is concerning for India, which sees China's growing presence in South Asia as a direct challenge to its regional influence. While India remains an important partner for Bangladesh, tensions over border conflicts, water disputes, and China's influence have strained their relationship. 7. Sri Lanka, resentment over regional dominance. One of the most persistent issues between India and Sri Lanka is the fishermen dispute in the Pak Strait, the narrow body of water that separates the two countries. Indian fishermen, particularly from Tamil Nadu, frequently venture into Sri Lankan waters, leading to arrests, boat seizures, and violent clashes with Sri Lankan authorities. Sri Lanka accuses Indian fishermen of using illegal bottom trawling methods, which harm marine biodiversity and affect local Sri Lankan fishermen's livelihoods. Despite diplomatic discussions, the issue continues to stir resentment in Sri Lanka, where many feel India is exploiting their resources. India's involvement in Sri Lanka's political landscape has been a sensitive subject. During the Sri Lankan Civil War, 1983 to 2009, India supported Tamil separatists before later aiding the Sri Lankan government in its fight against the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTTE. While India maintains that its engagements are diplomatic, many Sri Lankans view India as a hegemonic force attempting to control their internal affairs. India's recent efforts to push Sri Lanka away from China's influence have also sparked concerns about India's real intentions. In recent years, Sri Lanka has strengthened its relationship with China, securing large infrastructure projects such as the Hambantota port, which is now partially controlled by Beijing. India views China's expanding influence in Sri Lanka as a direct geopolitical threat. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, sees China as a more reliable economic partner, further widening the gap between Colombo and New Delhi.